Okay, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am so delighted to have a guest, my first official YouTube interview. Thank you so much. I have Antoinette MacKenzie here, who is an astrologer, a Hellenistic astrologer in Australia, speaking with an evolutionary astrologer in Canada, which I love. Thank you, Antoinette, for being here.
Oh, thank you.
And I asked Antoinette for you to come and speak because I was just really feeling into Saturn, at the time when I wrote to you, and as we know, Saturn is going to be moving into Aries, and so there is this heightened presence of Saturn. And I tend to work with Saturn, especially kind of in this reclaiming of the crone and the crone wisdom and the energy. And I thought of your work, Antoinette. Just for folks who haven't encountered Antoinette's work, she is just this, I just lovely. I have a bit of an astro crush on you, Antoinette, I have to admit. Beautiful, beautiful astrologer writing in your own words, working with the mythic archaeology into the archetypes. And I thought of you because you do so much work with Saturn as the bone mother. And so I wanted to invite you here. And I know a lot of times when I'm speaking with folks and I kind of mention the crone energy and the bone mother, people are really surprised, because I think there is this kind of idea of Saturn as the stern father archetype. And what happens when we reclaim and dig and go into these myths of Saturn as bone mother? So I just really wanted to invite you here to share your wisdom experience with us. And so thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Iris. It's such a pleasure. I'm so excited to talk to you because this is just such rich, beautiful, fertile soil. And yes, Saturn as crone, I feel is something that we're rediscovering. It's always been an expression of Saturn, very ancient, primordial expression of
Mm.
Saturn's energy. So it's lovely to be here and lovely to chat with you. And I'm thrilled.
Well, so maybe we'll jump into it. So can I, so this archetype of Saturn as bone mother, um, can I ask how she emerged for you in your own journey with astrology, with the archetypes, wherever that takes you, whatever that opens up?
Well, it was not something I expected.
Mm.
It was not something Saturn, bone mother Saturn was not a being that I sought out.
Mhm.
She's quite a tough character.
Mhm.
This is not a cuddly energy to sidle up to, even though, this is a very wise guide, and very loving in its own way. But I came to this very early on as a child through different experiences. One, my grandmother was a big part in my life in terms of raising me, and I, she was like my favorite person. She still is my best beloved, and even though she's passed, she's still with me, right? And so I had a very powerful kind of wise elder, which I feel is a real privilege
Mhm.
in this world now to have as a guide from a very young age. But I was also visited in dreams by crone figures at certain points in my life. And as a child, this frightened me terribly. I would have kind of not a recurring nightmare of waking in the night, believing that and this was when I was 9 or 10 years old, believing that I turned into a shriveled old crone and like a sort of a storybook witch character. And I would actually not, I'd be too afraid to turn on the lights, and I would crawl out of my bed, and across the room to gaze in the mirror, in my bedroom in the corner, trying to discern my face, trying to see the features on my face to see if this was real. And I was too frightened to actually really see, but in the dark, in the shadows, I was the crone. And that would happen a few times. And that was actually something that it was actually quite terrifying for me as a child or a young person. A bit like in if you've seen the Miyazaki film Spirited Away, when the young girl has turned into this old woman. I mean, that's not something that a young person wants to encounter. And but over the years, and that memory of those dreams stuck with me, and were quite chilling to me over the years. But as I got older, the dream, it's lost all of its terror now. And I actually saw that as a gift, as a companion with me, this bone mother figure who would turn up in all sorts of meditations as well, who guided me. And after the loss of my grandmother too, it just felt like a presence towards which I was moving into sinking into a deeper source of wisdom and knowledge and understanding. And it was really prodding me towards a life that was unfolding for me, that it was in a way quite, um, I could say it is. I live a fairly, I live on the edge of a forest in a cottage, um, with my animals, and I, grow things, and so I've always gardened, and even as a child. So I feel as though it was an echo of a future me that I was moving towards, and I am now embracing that bone mother wisdom. And I came to it through my studies in literature. When I did a PhD literature, I was very PhD in literature. I was very interested in the mythic, but I loved astrology too. And as I moved into an astrological practice, I began to sort of feel as though a lot of the myths, especially the far northern myths, where
Mm.
we have long enduring winters that hold on for months and months, that there were these figures, these bone mother figures, these crone myths that prevailed in these places that were
Mhm.
very, very old, that predated even some of the, well, for instance, Hecate is a pre-Olympian, figure in and of that region of the sort of the Hellenistic sort of period, but she was way older. And the Cailleach is a figure that I'm most familiar with because that's of my Highland Scottish heritage. My grandmother was Highland Scottish heritage. So she gave me those stories. And as I moved deeper into astrology and into my astrological practice, I couldn't ignore this call, this constant kind of refrain of seeing Saturn, one of Saturn's expressions, as a kind of Cailleach bone mother figure. As you know, that they're not all the same, they're not all equivalent, they're all very much their own beings, and beings born of the place, very specific to their locations and the environments and the ecology of place that I feel is really important. But they were very earthy and very much about deep time and very of the land, and aware of the cycles of time. And so this felt very Saturnian. And when I look at Hellenistic astrology, I wonder why the greater malefic, which is Saturn, is not a so-called crone feminine or
Mm.
yin uh, archetype or planet, when it makes a lot of sense to me that there are theories that it could well have been originally feminine, but we don't know.
Mhm. And it's so, I mean, just as you're talking about her, I'm feeling the Saturn, I'm feeling the
Mm.
wisdom, I'm feeling the time, especially, it really resonated with me as you said, why isn't this the greater malefic? Why isn't it the crone? Or what, or someone that embodies that weathering of the
Mm.
seasons and the wisdom that comes. That's one of the things when in my practice, when I'm always working with Saturn as crone, it's like it's taken a lot of discipline and work to be the wisdom keeper, to hold that. And I'm so curious about what happens when we view work and time not through kind of a traditional patriarchal lens, but instead one that is rooted in earth. And it's so, I mean, it's quite beautiful to me to hear how she's literally been journeying with you your whole life in different realms, it sounds like. Uh,
Yeah. And providing a lot of challenges along the way.
mhm,
So many challenges through, serious chronic illness and a number. And I'm not saying that that has to be the Saturnian path, but as someone who works closely with Saturn, if if you say yes to her, I'll devote myself to your teachings and trying to learn from you. There may be required of you a certain alchemy, a
mhm,
certain um, hard-won experience. It's
mhm,
through time and effort and experience and perseverance. She's not a theory. She's not something, right, that can be learned from a book. It's something that we embody and learn through applying ourselves in ways to life and the things that show up in our lives that we may be challenged to move through, not in a Marsy kind of
yep.
way necessarily. It is a slow, deep, enduring alchemy of chop wood, carry water.
Mhm,
And the rewards for that are often intangible, very beautiful. Part of my Saturnian work is also seeing how Venus aligns this kind of deep love and devotion can emerge from devoted practice in a very patient, loving way that we can actually derive other gifts from Saturn that may not be so obvious.
mhm. Oh my gosh, you just said so many things. And I love that you brought Venus up because she's about to station retrograde in about 8 minutes or so.
That's
Yeah, she's just come up.
She's
Um,
on her underworld journey.
oh, that also aligned with me because I have Venus in Capricorn. So there's like bringing
Ah,
some of these other layers in. I love
yes.
your use of the word alchemy with Saturn because I feel like we're used to hearing that word more in kind of Scorpio or Plutonic or watery ways. And I just feel that there's such richness in the way that you just brought alchemy into the Saturnian process. Um, and also that it's that slow, I mean, she brings us to wisdom, but it's slow and it can be hard. Let's just acknowledge that it can be hard. I mean, and maybe could you talk about that a little bit? I mean, especially, I mean, I'm more familiar with also kind of the Celtic bone mother crone myths. That's part of my
Mm,
grandmother's lineage as well.
mm.
Um, I mean, like she walks the winter, like she walks
Yes.
in winter. Like, can you just share a little bit about that, the myth and the
Yeah.
archetype?
Well, the Cailleach that I grew up with was very much from the far northwest of Scotland because that's where my people came from. And
Mm.
they were scratching a living through fishing and, crofting. And it was a hard life. And so the often the Cailleach that emerges, I mean, there are different versions of her. She's a little softer, the one in Ireland. She's a little, more kind of twinkling and joyful than she is. She's got a really fierce face where the stories that I've learned, because it is much more about survival up there. And so she's also probably Mesolithic because she recalls a time before the flood when when there was possibly, quite probably, the land between, not possibly, it was there, the land mass between Europe and Great Britain that was the hunting fields where a lot of deer cults sprang up. And she may go back to that period of the sort of Ice Age just at the end of the Ice Age there. So this figure that I grew up with, she brings in the winter at around Samhain. She brings in the winter by washing her cloak in a great whirlpool that lies between the Scotland and the Cailleach whirlpool, which is actually a really treacherous body of water. And she washes that for 3 days, and then she basically gets it and she flaps it out over the land and turns it white. She's turned it white from washing, and that's when the snow and the storms come in. And so she brings the winter. She's the bringer of storms. And she's blue-faced, often with an eye in the middle of her forehead, which reminds us of Kali, from
Absolutely.
Indian
Yeah.
myth. And she's someone that she's even got the red teeth. It's quite a fierce, terrifying visage. And that serves a purpose of warning people and animals to take shelter, to take cover, that now's the time to get warm and go within and to make sure that you have enough fuel and food and that you take care of the animals. You bring them inside with you and you hunker down for the winter and you make sure the fires are stoked and everyone is safe and shut down from the storms. Everything is protected. So she had that function. But the thing is that we also know about her that she was a protector of animals and also during childbirth, whether that be birthing animals or humans, that she was actually a protector. And so there is a guardian kind of
Mm.
feature to this figure, a guardian of the land itself and all of the beings on it, that we don't. There were terrible consequences that she would meter out to those, say, hunters who would try to harvest too much or too young the creatures from the land, because she was about understanding the cycles of time and that we need to preserve for the future and for future generations the resources, the beautiful, all of the beings basically that we need to take care and protect for the future. So this is part of the Saturnian wisdom is that there is this cool-headed, wise understanding that to take too much too soon, to plunder the earth, is something that will bear a bitter harvest. And she would disappear in the springtime after a great battle, usually with a spring goddess like Bridget, or who was also another aspect of the Cailleach in some stories. And so there's this endless renewal of the winter and the colder part of the year and the fiery, warmer months as well. And that there was this understanding of sort of flipping between the two. And there are also connections with the Cailleach to Sirius and to some of the star myths that even go through ancient Egypt as well. So we don't really quite know where all of this came from,
Mm.
but it's very much understanding the seasons and the seasonal shifts, and that she prevails over the winter months.
It's so rich. There's two thoughts coming up, spiraling in
Mm.
from listening with you. And one is everything that you just shared. I feel like it so aligns with, I think, the evolutionary lens of Saturn that I was kind of brought through, is how Saturn helps us walk this boundary line between what's knowable and what's beyond, what's beyond what
Yes.
can be known. And so as this guardian figure of how we need to respect the land and respect the process and respect the death process, and how, for me, that brings up the alchemy again somehow, about this process that we're in, that we can know it and therefore we need to respect it and honor it. Um, and and that also brings me into, as you were speaking about her, and one of I work a lot with kind of embodied astrology and archetypal astrology, and how,
Mm.
as you're describing her, like, we're here to embody her as well.
Yes.
And how, And I think this is where, I mean, I first started my astrology practice coming out of kind of doing trauma theory and healing as astrology for healing and
Yeah.
alternative paths that can be more integrated and work with the ecosystems we're part of and earth-based spirituality. And as you're speaking, it's, how is there also actually potential healing when we allow ourselves to claim our Saturn, to claim the bone mother wisdom, and to honor, I'm always sharing with, I teach 20-year-olds in media studies, and I'm always sharing about like the beauty of wrinkles, like the beauty of
Yeah.
aging, and how,
Yeah.
why should we try and erase those stories, the stories of
Yes.
survival and what our flesh and embodiment is sharing? And so I'm curious, um, how does embodying the bone mother,
Mm,
where does that take you when you hear that
mm,
phrase or resonate? I know you do so many, I mean, you've said that a lot of your practice lately has been in bone mother readings.
mm.
Can you just share anything that's spiraling up?
Yeah. Well, I love to just really go deep into that territory, into
Mm,
that earth in the chart. I mean, my own Mercury's in Scorpio, so I like to really burrow down in underneath and really explore what that, wherever Saturn is in the chart, what is the earth beneath the feet? What is that landscape? What is lying beneath that can become a really nourishing root system? What languages can we learn? I see the bone mother, even though Saturn traditionally rules both Capricorn and Aquarius,
mhm,
I often look to Saturn as the ruler of Capricorn in a as an expression of this particularly nocturnal feminine earth crone.
mhm,
And her passage through Capricorn, when we look at each decan, uh, partially I have come to understand Saturn's role as both guardian but as a mystic, as the bridge between spirit and matter, and how we can enrich and heal ourselves and the very earth of us that I feel we may be in danger of ignoring or bypassing, because there's a lot of talk about 5D, which is really beautiful and really compelling. And we are definitely experiencing quantum shifts in the field in and on Earth as well. But part of that for me, and from what I am hearing, from what I am know getting messages about very clearly, is that the beauty and power of being human incarnate in this body is that there is no separation from the earth and this other higher reality, that this is one of the most beautiful, joyful, creative, inspirited places to incarnate. We are here for creativity and joy, and to look at the earth beneath our feet and burrow down into that, to experience that. And I think about, for a start, what Saturn is teaching us, or what she is trying to show us. And that is that she's the mother tongue of all beings. She speaks and understands the the languages of every living thing, and the stone beings and the
mhm,
trees and the soil and the minerals and the earth and the water. Everything is, and of course, that is all within us, that there is this deep ecology of self. And when we root into that, because I feel, and what shows up for me in client practice is that we are quite a deeply traumatized planet. And there is a desire to, or not even a desire, it's a natural dissociation often, where we leave the body and we go off into something that feels it's ungrounded, but it's an understandable refuge in a way to sort of spring out of the body, to leave that the state of the world for a bit. But it's actually from really deeply loving the earth and seeing what treasures have been uncovered,
Mm,
seeing what is actually lying there for us, that we have an immense power and sovereignty to co-create with this beautiful world. We have far more power than we know, and
mm,
Saturn can show us the sovereignty that we have, also backbone and strength and will and power in ways that can be very strengthening. And it's like a bone broth she brings to the mix, and that we can draw strength from that and great wisdom to become elder, because we need elders. They are actually scarce in the world that we've created, and that to become elder is a humbling devotion to something far greater than ourselves.
mhm,
Whether that's, planting trees that we won't be around for on a really mundane level, but it's not mundane, it's actually magical. None of the things that there's so many things that we're told, oh, that's just oh, so what can planting something, it feels small. These small things have great power, and we can be talked out of them and made to feel helpless, when actually we have immense power and resource. And Saturn can help give us that, can show us where and how we are uniquely resourced to draw upon a deeper source of nutrient from the marrow of the earth, from the marrow of us, that can guide us through to somewhere, to a better future.
mhm.
Whatever that looks like, we don't know.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're recording this because you just spoke pure poetry and it was
Oh,
absolutely gorgeous. Thank you.
oh,
Thank you. It's so gorgeous. Um, I had a lot of kind of flashes and images while you were just talking as well. Like when you mentioned the bone broth, I really saw like the old crone at her cauldron
yeah.
with, like stirring it. And I
Mm.
also loved how you just brought in, because I also work with the mystic as part of this, as part of the
Yes.
crone as well. And I think you also really named that in that example of, the planting in earth, and it seems mundane, but it's also magical. And it's,
Yeah.
and there's that, and again, where's that boundary between what is known and unknown? And sometimes I like to work with that boundary line in Saturn. Part of the year I live by the ocean and I walk the shore every
Mm.
day. And it's just how that tide line is always shifting and it's
Yes.
always ebbing and flowing, and how we can live in this embodied rhythm with that boundary line between what is known and unknown. And maybe the shifting between what is known and unknown is a place to ask your feelings into. Saturn is shifting into Aries this year.
Yes.
It is happening.
A huge change, isn't it? A
Mhm.
huge change. So, and it's a double malefic energy, and an early Aries where it's a decan ruled by Mars. So it is very much, I just find it fascinating to see how the planets function in the signs. They're such a clue, aren't they, for the kind
Mhm.
of archetypal expressions. Um, but sorry, I do love that you walk by the shoreline. I just have to say, I'm just seeing this image, and it's such a kind of Saturnian Capricorn, beautiful, mystic, devotional practice.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just see that. And I see that Venus as well. Venus.
It's the moment of my life when I am most aligned in every single thing, is when I'm with the dogs just walking the shoreline. And
See, that is beautiful.
that's all there is.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had a vision of Venus as, that Venus to me, and Venus in Capricorn, is Vasilisa the wise. There's
Mm.
something about the crone with the maiden there that is very, very powerful. And I know that we're going to be talking about Saturn and Aries, and I can't get distracted, but I just keep seeing these images of yeah, that archetype. But with Aries, I mean, in Mars's sign, I mean, Mars is, for instance, exalted in Saturn's sign of Capricorn. And, that to me is also a clue about the kind of elder that we grow in a culture, or that can become or seek guidance from. But when Saturn goes into Aries, we have this old crone of winter in this fiery spring sign. It's at odds. It's definitely at odds in terms of the inspiration to act, to have will and courage, and to act first, and uh, think about it after, or take action now, and it, what is it? Shoot first and ask questions later. That's the cliche around Aries, but there is a divine inspiration. This is the exaltation of the sun. There is something really, to take right action at the right time is one of the most powerful things we can do to create the world that we want to live in. So Saturn is going to want to dampen that. Saturn has also got a heaviness about it that is saying, well, hang on a minute. I don't want you to have to do too much too soon, or act too rashly too soon. So we might second guess ourselves, or there may be, and I see people with this archetype. Saturn is in fall in Aries, but it's fascinating to me that over time, this person can often become a master of right action and courage and will, after experiencing, potentially often early on, a lack of confidence, a lack of feeling like their will is strong enough, or that their courage is enough, or that they are enough to be who they are in the world, or to stand up to authority, or to
Mhm.
resist some sort of oppressive force. So, the archetype itself, Saturn landing in Aries, is very different, of course, to the person, to the sacred mandala of a human being, and how that's all interacting. But we do see, uh, it's not an easy energy to be dealing with. And Saturn in Aries, it is a big wake-up call in some ways, and how we're going to structure things, and what is the foundation here that we're trying to build, and yet go out and act on, and feel, and we can initiate. What action can we initiate? What ideas, what creativity, when Saturn is kind of hobbling along, saying, no, slow down. I need you to I need you to cool down a bit. Doesn't
Mhm.
Aries doesn't want to cool down.
Mhm. Aries
So
does
I
not want to cool down.
know. So it's
Um,
quite acrid.
yeah.
Spicy and acrid.
I
Mm,
love it. I love it too as you're speaking, because I mean, here we have like one of the differences of evolutionary and Hellenistic astrology is that in evolutionary, we don't work with, a planet in fall. We just don't use
yeah.
that terminology. And yet I'm always still drawn to it. And I'm always wanting
Mm,
to, and I think it's as you're speaking, it really is. It's so going beyond the binary of good and bad, or, and
absolutely.
it's what as you're speaking, I mean, what happens when these two archetypal energies dance? And yes, there might be some diverging, and it might be a challenge at times to find a rhythm. But there's also, I mean, as you described, the wisdom that
Mm,
can emerge. And
yes.
it's also interesting because maybe maybe the world actually we need some slowing down. As you're
Yes.
speaking about Saturn coming into Aries, and I am curious. I mean, we were just inside the bone mother in this kind of bringer of winter,
Mm,
coming into primal fire, coming
mm,
into, and I mean, the poetry is just wanting to like stream out of me, and I think that's why I love to work with the archetypes and poetry and poetic inquiry, because
mm.
how can that maybe even bring us into understanding this? I mean, I want to say new embodiment of the bone mother starting her new cycle, and
Yes.
I don't know that we can separate that from the fact that Neptune's also going to be in
We
that
can't.
dance.
We can't, can we? But no, I know, and it made, when you're talking about the bone mother starting a new cycle. That actually is part of the myth of the Cailleach, as she renews herself in the waters at the very end of winter. They say every 100 years, when she is so old and bent and broken, she goes and renews herself as the spring fire goddess or archetype or being in a lake near the mountains, in a loch, uh, near the at the foot of the mountains. And this becomes this new energy. And that's very much this Aries archetype. If we think about also the Picatrix, the ancient, images in the Picatrix, is a red woman rising up out of the waters in early Aries. That feels like this renewal. And, when we're talking about this dance, you were saying this dance between these two, it's the creative tension.
Mhm.
When things are too smooth and too soft and too, where's the creative power? Like there's something very fruitful. It's like a tango. There's a
Mhm.
fiery tango. There's something very passionate and enlivening and exciting. And so, challenge isn't something to be flinching away from so when I talk about planets in fall, and when, for instance, Saturn in Aries, that's something that when I see that lived in a life, and I see skillful means, I see right action, I see a different kind of wisdom that isn't always available to other people because it is a bit more hard won. It's been the creative challenge, and it's beautiful and it's powerful. So I find it really exciting. But with Neptune, of course, there is this Neptune Saturn. This is on a collective level huge change. And we probably are going to have to be, going through some sort of fiery baptism or renewal
Mhm.
in order to, and testing our dreams and our visions as well as the structures and foundations of those dreams. What is a good dream? What is a dream that is worth building upon, and what is needing to melt away or dissolve, uh, because Neptune is also a bit of a dissolver as well. And in Pisces, we've seen the dissolution of a lot with Saturn and Neptune there co-present. Um, what are your thoughts on this, on what's
I
coming?
am, since you, I am in this place right now of you just having described that, of feeling this potential birth of like a new fire witch, of a new way
Mm,
of of working the spell and with fire, with Saturn and Neptune being there, as you were talking about new dreams and visions. And I have really been feeling in that for on different levels, that there is this birthing of a new reality,
yes.
and it's going to play out for different consciousnesses in different places, and we're going to all be part of all of these different layers.
Yeah.
And yet, as you were just speaking, because I'm really feeling into that Saturnian wisdom that you've really beautifully opened up. And when Neptune is there, also beginning a new cycle
Mm,
in this primal fire, a part of me is wondering, is this also potentially an opening to almost access like an ancient Aries wisdom that we is hard to come by? That maybe
yeah.
it's hard to come by, or maybe needs Neptune to come and shift reality so that and it's, because this is happening. It's happening. And in this moment, I feel so grateful that I am a human alive right now, and I get to experience this and feel into the land while this is happening. And um yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, as you were speaking, one of the really clear messages that I've been getting lately, and it came through again then, was that we are not a blight, that the
Mm,
human that the beautiful human, we are not a blight, and that these messages of darkness have been constantly at us, feeling like we're destroying things. But it's
Mhm.
not us. We can actually co-create. We are here to create beautiful things and to be joyful. And so this is a dream of this. This is this new birth, Aries, the I. I am worthy of
Mhm.
beautiful dreams for the future, for others, for myself, for the earth. There's something about the birth of a will and to dream well, and that we can break away maybe from a collective mesmerism and to check our delusions, because it gets pretty foggy in Pisces with Neptune there.
Yep.
And I feel like we're already waking up. It's so, I mean, Aries, sorry, Saturn goes into Aries in, I think it's May 25th.
Yep.
And Neptune's showing up there earlier, isn't it? I haven't got the right dates, but yeah, Neptune's showing up earlier,
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
So we're getting a taste of a shift in reality, as you're saying. And so it's going to feel, I'm already feeling like there's a real sort of sense of awakening into something that is, it's like waking from a sleep, a deep sleep or a deep hypnosis.
Mhm.
And perhaps we might be seeing more and more how we've been hoodwinked,
Mhm.
and that there is, and I'm fiercely, this is where I get really fierce. The human is a beautiful creature. We
Mhm.
have, there's this whole thing of we are a virus. This is so wrong. We are so crucial for the world and for the earth. And it's not the being human that's the problem. It's we need to be
Mhm.
more human than ever. So, and to have compassion for the human
Mhm.
and to not want to leave the planet or leave this reality or go into another dimension, because it's all here and we can access those portals through this embodiment. And so this shift in reality, it is going to be challenging, but it's so, this is where we are. This is part of the beautiful evolution that's so crucial too. So yeah, there's a massive, it's starting to feel like night and day already, the shift.
Yes. I just felt so strongly as you were sharing that, and that maybe this, because I have seen a lot more people speaking about Saturn and the crone. Like I've seen it
Yeah.
popping up. I've seen the shift,
Yes.
and there's so much about the reclaiming of the feminine and
Mm.
and maybe. And especially because Saturn is literally coming in with Neptune, Saturn is here. And so as you were saying that, I was thinking back to the beginning of our conversation and how, claiming the beauty of the human, how Saturn can help us do that. How,
Yeah.
and Saturn can help us root in to that wisdom and slow down and even come into the 3D with, the beauty of Earth that we are
Yeah.
here for. And and I really felt this bone mother compassion in the moment. It's like, yes, she knows the hard truth. But, in my own experience, like as much as we tend to look at Neptune, as some of that kind of unbound divine love, compassion, I also, in that bone broth, like there
Mm.
is compassion born of the experience, of the
Mm.
wisdom, of knowing that we do keep breathing and we
Yeah.
keep going and we put our hands in soil and we do plant trees that will outlive us, hopefully. And I don't know, there's just so much there. I think that Saturn actually offers so much wisdom for this new cycle that's beginning.
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the beautiful human. This is
Mhm.
the wisdom of accessing. That's why I also love to look at the territory of Saturn, because it gives us so many clues. But with this, the image of the cauldron and the bone broth,
Mhm.
I mean, another clear vision that I keep getting in meditation over the years, and it's become stronger and stronger, is because this, bone mother is the keeper of cycles, but it's death within life and life within death. It's endlessly, she gathers up the bones. And the visions that I'm having, which are very Saturn through Capricorn in a lot of ways, is she's sitting high on a mountain in a cave, and I keep seeing her sitting on the bones of the dead, of and the human and other than human. She forgets no one. She brings everyone home to her. And I often get a little bit teary when I'm talking about this because it's such a clear vision that she leaves nothing behind, no one, nothing. She brings it all together beneath her, and she sits on them, and she's singing over the bones, and she's weaving the bones new life and singing new life and remembering the songs, remembering the lives that have passed. She doesn't forget anything. She guards, protects, and breathes new life into the beautiful human that is you. She will never discard and never forget, so that even in our most alone, darkest nights, we can companion with these kinds of beings and understand that there is an endless amount of compassion, even though it might not be soft and cuddly. It is fiercely, endlessly protective and compassionate, and that we are here for a reason, that we are valuable, that no one is forgotten, that human existence has been overwritten by something else, and that we really matter, that the beauty of the human is so precious. And all of the other than human, of course, and that she knows all of the different languages. And as we move through her territory, I really have got a sort of a deeper sense of what this Saturn is saying. And I feel as though, and we sort of mentioned this briefly before we started chatting, is when Pluto moved out of Capricorn, Saturn's nocturnal crone home. I feel like Pluto really exposed what is of value, what riches have come to the surface, and they're chthonic. And what we've learned about the Earth over the period of time that Pluto was moving through Capricorn has been quite phenomenal. Like
Mhm.
histories that maybe archaeology, we wouldn't have aligned with our versions of history. The secret language of trees, the, the way the earth actually speaks and has intelligence. We are becoming more aware, I feel, since Pluto left Capricorn. There's a feeling of, oh, yes, this is an animist world. Everything is alive. Everything speaks, and we're part of this. We're a crucial part. We're connected to everything. So this is partly this feeling of, as Saturn moves into Aries, to remember the riches, to draw deeply from that reservoir of wisdom and knowledge that's available to us, rather than skipping on ahead to the future moment. That this is where we can draw immense nourishment for what lies ahead, and to really ground down into that, to understand that it's part of our birthright, our inheritance as human beings of this earth. So that's been a very clear message for me lately, and in the past couple of years especially. I keep seeing the bone mother as a weaver of lives, and a singer, a memory keeper, as much as a future life cycle birther.
Mhm. The moment that you shared the vision that you've had of her sitting on the bones, all streaming through me was singing over the bones. Like the phrase was just
Mm-hmm,
in me that
mm-hmm.
she's singing over the bones. And then you said it, and I was like, yes, she's singing over the bones. And so, it's so rich.
Well, that's to me also. When I saw that, I thought, what is this? And it's the third decan of Capricorn, which is sun ruled. This is a solar figure who has sovereignty, who is protecting and guarding the realm. But this is not as simple as the material, is it? It's the material which is really important, but it's something beyond that because whoever is holding the crown, they're just holding the seat of power. They're not saying that I am entitled to the seat of power. They protect the protector of the realm and ensuring that life continues beyond them. They are in a role that is of service to life itself and future life. And so this is what I feel Saturn teaches us and why we put elders in charge of warriors in um, traditional tribes and traditional practices because they could actually guide the more youthful impulses. And perhaps that's part of the power of Saturn and Aries is this is a challenging combination. But what if we actually really applied the wisdom of this over time and became wise warriors in our lives um, with skillful means, like a wise elder would.
It's incredible. I mean, it's also just so what is needed. And also, as you're speaking, I mean, how is that also the reclaiming, the reclaiming that brings us into, as you said, like especially in the modern world, we're so conditioned to want to skip ahead, to have instantaneous everything, and what we've been taught about power and these power over ideologies and how the bone mother actually can just bring us into what has been forgotten by so many kind of mainstream practices and belief structures. I really loved as you were describing um, Saturn, and also when you were talking about Capricorn and this kind of the wisdom that allows us to protect the future and also understand. I just felt like that was such a gift of a description of Capricorn energy as well.
Mm-hmm.
I find that, especially in pop astrology, Capricorn just gets contorted into
So much.
so much, like so pulled out of
Yeah.
everything we've been talking about.
It,
Um,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
Capricorn has just been reduced to the very thing that Pluto exposed what it wasn't.
exactly.
There's just the overstory, the corporate, corrupt overstory is not the soul, the heart, the spirit of Capricorn, the light and the darkness. You know, the lantern and the dark, the protector, the regenerator, the understanding deep time cycles and being able to renew and the return of the light, you know, the emergence of the light symbolically. This is, you know, while still being in the darkness and holding that, understanding what it takes to get through that.
Mhm.
There's just, yeah, there's Capricorn in pop astrology drives me a bit crazy. Like,
Yeah, me as well.
so
Um, Me as well. I'm just gonna share, and we're broaching on an hour, and I don't want to take you for too much longer. But as you were just speaking about that, I don't know. I feel like the archetypes speak through the images that emerge, at times.
Mm,
And as you were talking about the light and dark, I had this flash of when I was in grad school, I worked with Dante's Divine Comedy a lot. That was kind of a big piece of my work. And there's this scene in the beginning when Dante encounters Virgil, and Virgil's poetry is described as this lantern that can guide him through the dark. And it was also kind of revolutionary for Dante to say that because having lived before Christ, Virgil's poetry is going to take Dante into this, Christian framework of God. But for some reason that came up, and it brings me back into Saturn and bone mother boundaries as
mm,
well.
mm.
The way that this wisdom of the ancient, when we embody it, it can also it can teach us about what's also birthing itself
Yeah,
now in a new
yes.
in a new way, and it's ancient and it's new somehow is how I feel.
Mm. And it's moving between realities as well. You know,
Yes.
that and the lantern, you know, this image of Hecate came to me, that coming between the worlds, the underworld and you
Hmm.
know, in
Hmm.
fact, one of the only figures who can move between the worlds freely. And that is part of our own ability. This it's
Hmm.
such a it is something that, yeah, earthing, grounding into, and it sounds such a cliche, but it's not meant to be complicated. We can overcomplicate our lives and feel overwhelmed and feel like, oh, but there's something I must be able to do. And it can take us away from what we really can do and what the power we do have. And, you know, when you were talking earlier about fire, working with the element of fire and fire ceremonies, our own small fire ceremonies, is incredibly transformative. You know, one of my teachers, Gordon White, talks about fire and fire as the first shaman. You know,
Hmm.
this is a transformative power. I think that, you know, there's so much we can do that feels we don't we can be talked out of believing or knowing how much power we really do have within our hearts and what we're capable of. And I think, yes, slowing down, not skipping ahead too far and wanting, oh, what's coming next? And I find that sometimes leaping on forecasts, which can be helpful for planning, but only to a degree. We're here to live this and experience this, and alchemize it. Coming back to the alchemy, we want to allow ourselves the time to digest and alchemize that internal fire, the knowledge that brings us closer to our purpose, our true purpose, and what we're here for to do ourselves, that we can give as gifts to the world around us, to others, and fulfill that kind of beautiful destiny that we have. So there's maybe an element of surrender in that as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. This has been extremely nourishing for me.
Oh,
I'm
me
sure
too. I love talking about the bone mother with you. This is beautiful. And
it's
you love,
beautiful.
yeah, you love talking about the things I love talking about. So
Yes. And hopefully, folks listening, you love feeling into it as well.
yeah.
Antoinette, are there any last images or thoughts or feelings or anything that you want to share?
Well, just in terms of the time that we're looking at the moment, we're really only going to be getting a taste of Saturn and Aries this
Hmm.
year coming.
Hmm.
So it's only really going to be about 3 months from the end of May until I think it's September, because it stations retrograde mid-July in Aries and works back to Pisces. So we're just experiencing a bit of Saturn and Aries, but always, traveling quite close to Neptune. But then once Saturn goes back into Pisces in September, I think it's around the 1st of September, we sort of really, perhaps that's a good opportunity to have a sense of to really observe and review what that might look like for you personally, and in what part of the sky that falls for you, what sort of area of your life, to get a sense of what might be rising, what changes, what new transformation might be coming through for you. So it feels like we do get to put our toe in the water, even though it's going to be, I feel, quite
Hmm.
hot water. Like, it's going to warm up pretty quickly, but it's also that, yeah, it's possibly something to keep in mind, just to sort of see where that might be going, and then to take that time to really slow down and sort of go, okay, what's still finishing it off here? What is still yet to be digested or alchemized or experienced, and to draw from the richness of that experience that's been wrought over time.
I think that's so important. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. It also had the thought, I was like, oh, maybe we could chat again in September after we've had this, and then we could kind
Yeah.
of feel into how
Yeah.
just that first taste, because you're right, it's just a taste. It's like, I'm gonna go to 1 degree and then I got some
Yeah.
more Pisces
Yes,
to work
still
with.
more Pisces. I think it goes back to 25 degrees of Pisces. And so we're yeah, halfway through that final decan of Pisces. And when we go back to it, and that's still finishing up the end of the ending. Saturn is that in traditional astrology, it's the furthest planet, the last visible planet. It's the end of the matter, and so Pisces is the end of the matter. So endings take a while.
Endings take a while.
Yeah, and we need to allow ourselves those endings. So yeah. Mm.
Thank you so, so much for sharing yourself, your wisdom, your embodied wisdom, your various relationships with the bone mother, with me and with folks here on YouTube. Um, it was a really beautiful gift. So I'm just so thank you.
Thank you, Irish. Iris, it's been really beautiful. It's gorgeous. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
And I should say before I stop recording, um, I will put your website down below. And I have a
Thank you.
feeling some folks may be interested in having a bone mother reading with you.
Sure.
I'll put your info down below and you can all check out Antoinette's beautiful offerings there. Okay, thank you so much.